The rain had been falling since morning, thin, cold drops that blurred the edges of the world into gray smudges. Joe Mallory, the town's quiet mechanic, wiped the oil from his hands and glanced outside the garage window. Another slow day. Business had been crawling lately, and so had his life. Ever since his wife left 3 years ago, Joe's world had shrunk to the size of his small repair shop, his coffee mug, and the hum of old engines. He didn't expect much from the world anymore. But fate has a way of walking into our lives when we least expect it, sometimes on small, unsteady legs. That afternoon, as Joe was about to close up early, he saw a beat-up old sedan pull into the lot. The engine coughed once, then died completely. Out stepped a woman in her late 30s, her eyes tired but kind. In the back seat, Joe caught a glimpse of a frail little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wrapped in a bright yellow blanket that looked far too cheerful for the weather. "Hi," the woman said, her voice strained but polite. "I'm sorry to bother you. The car just quit on me. I think it's the alternator again." Joe nodded. "No problem, ma'am, I can take a look." As he popped the hood, he noticed the girl watching him from the car window, big brown eyes, curious and shining despite how pale she looked. He gave her a small wave, and to his surprise, she smiled and waved back with her tiny, trembling hand. "Is she sick?" Joe asked softly, glancing toward the woman. The woman hesitated, her lips tightening. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Leukemia. We're coming from the children's hospital. It's been a long road." Joe froze for a moment, the wrench heavy in his hand. He didn't say anything, just nodded and kept working. He'd lost someone to cancer once. His little sister, years ago. The memories hit like a hammer to the chest. Within a few minutes, he had the car running again. The woman looked relieved, but before she could thank him, the little girl's voice piped up from the back seat. "Mom, can I go see the garage?" Her mother started to protest, but Joe smiled and said, "It's all right. I'll keep an eye on her." The girl stepped out carefully, her movements slow and cautious, holding onto the car door for balance. Joe noticed the hospital wristband still on her arm. "What's your name, kiddo?" he asked. "Lila," she said, grinning. "What's yours?" "Joe." "Hi, Joe the mechanic," she said proudly, as if she'd just given him a title of honor. "Do you fix everything?" "Everything that can be fixed," Joe said with a shrug. She looked around the dusty shop, eyes wide with wonder. "Even hearts?" He froze. Her question hit him harder than a wrench to the head. "Hearts?" he repeated. "Yeah, my mom's heart looks sad sometimes." "Do you fix those too?" He managed a weak smile. "I'm not sure I'm that kind of mechanic, sweetheart." Lila nodded thoughtfully. "That's okay. Maybe you could learn." Joe laughed softly. "Maybe. That day turned into something unexpected. The alternator job was simple, but the woman, Sarah, said the car needed a bit more work before it could make the long drive home. She asked if Joe could keep it overnight. So while she made a phone call, Lila sat in Joe's office, drawing pictures on his old receipts. When it came time for them to leave, Lila struggled to climb the steep steps at the front of the shop. Her mother moved to help, but before she could, Lila looked up at Joe and said with a mischievous smile, "If you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you a secret." Joe blinked, unsure how to respond. "A secret? Huh, sounds serious." "It is," she whispered, giggling. So Joe, big and clumsy in his grease-stained overalls, scooped her up carefully. She was light, frighteningly light, like a bundle of feathers wrapped in skin. As he carried her up the steps, her head rested against his shoulder. When they reached the top, she whispered in his ear, "You're sad too, aren't you?" Joe froze. "What?" "It's okay," she said softly. "I can tell. People who fix things always are. But don't worry, sad people make the best helpers. My nurse told me that." Then she smiled, kissed his cheek, and said, "That's my secret." He didn't know what to say. Over the next few days, Sarah and Lila returned a few times, sometimes for repairs, sometimes just to visit. The garage began to feel less empty when they were around. Lila would sit on a stool and help by handing Joe tools, often wrong ones, but he didn't mind. Her laughter filled corners of the shop that hadn't heard joy in years. But one morning, Sarah showed up alone. Joe knew the moment he saw her face. The light was gone. She didn't make it," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "The doctors tried everything. She asked me to tell you thank you, and that she was glad she met Joe the mechanic." Joe stood there, frozen, hands trembling. He didn't know what to do, what to say. Sarah handed him a folded piece of paper. She wanted you to have this. When Sarah left, Joe sat in silence for a long time before finally opening the note. Inside was a simple drawing, a stick figure of Joe, a girl with a yellow blanket, and a big red heart between them. Underneath, in a child's shaky handwriting, were the words, "For Joe, the heart fixer." Months passed. The world went on, but something in Joe had changed. He started volunteering at the children's hospital on weekends, fixing toys, building little car models, telling stories about Joe the mechanic and the girl who fixed his heart. He smiled more, talked more, even reconnected with his estranged sister. He'd learned something from that little girl, that sometimes the broken things in life aren't engines or machines. They're people, and sometimes, the only fix is kindness. On the wall of his shop, above the tool rack, Joe framed Lila's drawing. Every time he looked at it, he remembered her small voice, her courage, and her secret. And every time someone came into the shop sad, tired, or lost, Joe would smile gently and say, "Don't worry, around here, we fix hearts too."